In today's video, I'm going to show you a short functional integration demonstration. Michaela is 8 months pregnant and she has a bit of back pain. And so in this lesson, I will be working on her ability to turn better, which will also release some tension in the upper back. So in the beginning of the session, I ask her to turn to one side and then to the other side, so we can see how the turning movement is done. And we can see it is a little bit more difficult to her right side. She's actually tilting the head down. And that is something that I want to check on during the lesson. Now I'm asking her to lie down, and you can see that I'm pulling her legs. This is something that we often do in Feldenkrais, just to see how the force travels through the body. And you can see as I'm pulling her legs that her head is moving along with it, and this is generally a good sign. So if there would be lots of tension in her upper body, then the head might not be moving at all. However, we can see that there is some difference. So if I pull the right leg, it's a little bit easier than the left leg. And now I'm also checking on her shoulders. So first of all, I'm just placing her head in the middle, and then I'm putting my hands under her shoulders, and I'm lifting one shoulder to see how easy the shoulder lifts, and if the head joins in, and then I'm lifting the other shoulder. And I can notice that in this case, her left shoulder lifts easier than the right one. However, her head stays pretty much in the middle. So if you lift one shoulder, then the head should naturally turn into the opposite direction. And I'm starting by placing one hand under her shoulder and the other hand onto her clavicle. And I'm guiding her clavicle to the side. So I want to integrate the clavicle and the shoulder. I'm lifting her left shoulder as this was the easier one. So I'm starting on that side. And at the same time, I'm gently pushing down the clavicle to the right side. And I'm placing my hand on her sternum. And again, I want to integrate her sternum and her shoulder. So every time I lift the shoulder, I also guide the sternum to the side. So all of these movements that I'm doing are connected to the function of turning. So I want to integrate every part of herself into this movement. Now I'm taking her arm and placing it onto her head, onto her forehead. And then I'm rolling the forehead with the help of her arm. So the neck can be really free from tension. The neck doesn't have to be involved in this movement. It's just the weight of the arm and obviously myself guiding her to this movement. And this is a really nice movement that you can do for yourself as well, by the way. So just place one hand on your forehead and roll your head to the side. Make sure your neck is free from tension. Now a little variation of that. I'm placing her hand on the opposite shoulder. Again, with one hand I'm lifting her shoulder, and with the other hand I'm guiding the elbow towards the side. And if the arm is placed on the upper body like that, it will cause some folding in the ribs, and that is also helpful for turning. And now just another variation. I'm placing her forearm on her forehead. So it was the hand before, now it's the forearm. And I can also use that one to integrate this into the turning movement. So now it's her arm, her shoulder, and her head moving together to the side. And now finally, I'm just rolling her head with my hands.
And I'm trying to integrate the rolling of the head with the lifting of the shoulder. So with one hand I'm lifting her shoulder, with the other hand I'm rolling her head to the side. So now I'm just pulling her arm. And we can see how the rest of the body reacts to this movement. So the head is rolling to the side as the left shoulder is now leaving the table. And now again I have one hand on her forehead and the other hand keeps pulling the arm. Just to give her this idea again, that her head can join in with this rolling movement. Placing her head back in the middle, and now bringing my hands back under her shoulders again to see if anything has changed. And we can see that there is a lot more movement in the left shoulder as I lift it. And also the right shoulder lifts easier than before. That's the great thing about Feldenkrais. You improve one side and then the other side improves as well, because our brain just wants to learn. Now I'm switching to the other side, changing the order up a little bit here. So I'm actually starting with the hand on the forehead. And I just did this kind of spontaneously, so there is no reason to change the order of the movements that I did. Now placing the hand on the opposite shoulder. And you can see I'm lifting her shoulder with one hand and guiding her elbow to the side. And now placing one hand under the shoulder and the other one onto the clavicle. So again, I want the whole body to know that we're going to the side. We're rolling to the side. As I lift the shoulder, the weight is kind of shifting to the opposite side. And so I'm integrating the clavicle and the shoulder so they can kind of move together with the same idea of motion in mind. Now integrating the sternum and the shoulder. Now move on to rolling her head. And now I'm pulling the arm again. And we see the pull of the arm leads to a rolling motion of the head. And again, placing my hand under her shoulder just to see if there's any difference. And we can also see that the head is responding a lot more. It still hasn't fully understood that it can roll to the side as the shoulder is lifted. But we can see there is a lot more differentiation. So the shoulders can move quite independently and there is no neck tension anymore that prevents the shoulders from making a big and easy movement. And now I'm switching to her legs again to see if anything has changed. Again, I'm pulling her legs and pushing them, and we can see that the movement is a lot smoother. We see a lot more movement. So again, this means that unnecessary tension was released and the force travels easier throughout the whole body. And now I want to integrate her back into the turning motion. So I start at the pelvis and I roll it to the side because the pelvis can obviously join in as well. Then I'm placing my hand on the lower back and then on the lower ribs, because all of that can participate in the turning movement. So now I'm integrating the back. I was working with the upper back and shoulders, and now integrating the pelvis, the lower back, the ribs. Switching to the other side and doing the same movement. Now I'm bringing her leg to standing. Now I'm working with the legs a little bit to integrate the pelvis even more. And the first thing I'm doing is I bring her leg to standing, place my hands, interlaced hands on her knee or on her upper thigh, so to speak, and I'm pulling towards myself. And I also want to notice how is this movement traveling through the body. And the head only moves a little bit. So I notice that there is some tension in the hip joint, and that's like the first step I want to release. So now I'm, first of all, pulling the knee and placing my other hand on her lower back and kind of lifting the lower back a little bit as I'm pulling the knee away. So this movement can travel throughout her back. And now I'm just tilting the leg to one side and then to the other side. To release any more tension in the hip joints. And now switching back to the original movement, pulling her leg, and we can see that her head is moving a lot more. So it's quite easy to rock, do this rocking movement now. And again, this is important for turning and also for back pain. If we have stiff hips, it will be much more difficult to turn, and therefore the back has to compensate a lot, which leads to pain. Now I'm switching to the other side, basically doing the same thing. First of all, pulling the knee towards myself, and we can see there is movement in the head. However, it is a bit limited. So first thing that I'm doing now, and you can see it better on this side, is I'm kind of pulling the knee away and at the same time having my other hand on her back, on her lower ribs, just so she can feel how these parts are connected and how this movement can impact the lower back and the ribs. And then tilting to one side and then to the other side to release a bit more tension in the hip joints. And now trying this pulling movement again. And again, we can see that the head responds a lot more. You can also see the change. If you look at me, you can see that I'm able to move a lot more because her body is much more responsive now. Now I'm coming back to her legs again just to get another reference. And again, we see that the body moves a lot more. So this is the connection, the integration that we are aiming for. And so now I'm finishing off the lesson. So I'm doing a few last steps to integrate everything. So now I put my hands under her neck and they are at the C7-T1 area. So this is where the 7th cervical spine, cervical vertebra meets the first thoracic vertebra. So if you put your hand on your neck and you slide down, you can see it. This is like the first bump. Now I'm lifting her shoulders. We see a lot more movement happening. The head joins in a little bit, so this might be a topic for the next session to integrate the head into this movement even more. We can see that the upper back is kind of soft. Shoulders are able to release. So now I'm pressing my thumbs onto her rib cage actually, so I can press down. Now I'm pulling her head again to sense how everything is connected. Now we're finishing it off. I'm removing the roller and I'm bringing her to sitting. So I bring one leg to standing, I'm doing it for her, she's bringing the other leg to standing by herself. Then I'm pulling her arm and she lets her leg sink so she can turn onto the side. Now in sitting we want to check the first movement again. So again I'm asking her to turn to one side. Yeah, we see a lot more movement. We also see the opposite side participating. So as one side is turning backward, the other side is moving forward. And we also see it on the other side and she's not tilting her head as much anymore. We still see the tendency to tilt, but she's more capable of turning from her back now. Now to finish it off, I'm bringing her to standing. And I will also let her do the turning movement in standing now. And we also want to see like full integration, the hip is joining in, the back is joining in the movement. And now I'm just letting her walk a few steps to integrate this experience.